Today we have Sean here with us. Sean is the best father in the galaxy. However, I don't see your family here. Nope, okay. So Sean arrived to Vilnius together with his whole family. Full house, right? So a little bit about Sean. Over 20 years of experience. He's specializing in providing simple solutions for complex business requirements. Yes, and I am with mask. Sean Farmar holds the world record for answering the most end-service business question. And today, we are going to have a brand new question. Actually, William Shakespeare, let's say current update. To rewrite or not to rewrite? So, Sean, not the virtual, but finally the actual stage is yours.
Hello, Vilnius. And hello to the people at home as well. So, as was said before, my name is Sean Farmar. I'm going to talk about why we want to rewrite and when we should and when we shouldn't. The default is, of course, we don't rewrite, but we'll talk about that. So I'm sure you might have been in this situation before, at least the more senior people are amongst you, where you coming to this project and they say, hey, this is, just fix this and do this feature and whatever. And it turns out very quickly that it's like a serious problem that you need to solve. And during the years, I felt like the cleaner. I don't know if you know the reference of Nikita. Anybody saw? I don't know. Yeah. So I felt like this cleaner. I was called in. Every time I walked into this, it was a war room. Everybody was huffing and puffing. There was a whole, I needed to clean up the mess. Although I didn't create it, but it was still my... So basically the scenario is you come in, system is bursting at the seams. It's like 3 to 5 years old piece of whatever. And it's like fragile, impossible to maintain. The team and I were like these firefighters. Yeah, we're just like the daily routine was every time we published something into production, the whole thing crapped on us. We had to quickly run in, fix the, whether it was SQL or code. And that was back in the day when there was no, continuous delivery was not in the, not a thing. Yeah. So that meant that, we're jumping on RDPing on thing, deploying zips and unpacking them and rebooting the servers. You probably know the story. So, at some stage, I got very overwhelmed and I said, okay, enough is enough. And I went to the manager and said, listen, we need to do something about this. This doesn't work, we're, in a couple of months' time, it's going to be the case where the system will go down and will never come back again. And, we have to do something about this. So I said, let's rewrite, what's the rewrite all the things, just, it's done, there's no, it's sunken costs here. Just throw everything out and let's start from beginning. And back in the day, that was about like 15 years ago, it was an industry standard, everybody said, yeah, that's fine. I think even, it was showing in the business graphs and that, 3 to 5 years is a lifetime of a system. And after 3 to 5 years, you just rewrite. There's no hope for that anymore. When I went to my manager at this, in these kind of scenarios, I had more or less the same spiel, the same story. It was like, this was written a long time ago. There's so many hacks and shortcuts. Now we understand the domain a lot better. We know all the things we didn't know when we designed the system. There's whole loads of raft of new technologies we can use and make it all, more reliable, sustainable, and so on and so forth. And, like, it's going to be a lot easier than to spend like 3 to 5 years rewriting this, fixing it, constantly fixing it. And anyway, it's a piece of crap. Just throw it away. So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. And my first one is around 2005. And it was Microsoft internal IT. I was a contractor there for a long while. And I came in to this thing where our team was tasked with like owning Shadow's applications in the business. I don't know if you worked in internal IT or if you know a little bit about, not the web stuff and commercial, but, the real life where people make money. I'm joking. But every department usually has one or two IT, kind of IT, more IT attenuated people. And the managers go to them and say, hey, listen, can you build me a little report that goes, in Excel with some functions? So every time I update this will update and send me an email and put it over there. And so they built these little shadow apps, yeah? And of course, every department has their own version of something like that. And we're tasked to kind of pick all these things up and bring it to the central EMEA and own it. Yeah, so deploy it on our servers, maintain it, have a documentation and all that. And part of the process was, or the motivation there was to, back in 2005, PII, the whole thing of what we call today data privacy kind of started popping up. So a lot of things around personal information and security and all that were more of a concern. So they said, this is, that's an opportunity. We'll review the code and we'll take it in there. Own it. And of course, whatever is like duplicate, we'll throw it away, and whatever is worthwhile, we'll maintain. And we came, as part of this process, I came across this MS Vacation, yeah, which was like a vacation logging system, yeah? So where employees would come in and ask their managers to go on vacation, what dates, whatever, the manager would approve it. Makes sense, yeah? So we looked at this this thing very briefly. It was an internal system, so it wasn't like customer facing or anything like that. And a vendor put it up, a company in somewhere. I don't want to start spilling beans here, but some company, a vendor, put it together, and as soon as kind of we started looking at it, it was obvious that this is not going to be fit for purpose. It had this very interesting data model that basically consisted of item, an item type, an item value, an item property, an item, I can't remember all the things, elements, an attribute, and so on and so forth. If you can imagine, this was like a self-referencing kind of monster of a data thing. It was brilliant because you could model anything with it, yeah? I don't know if any of you done XSLT or any of the XML stuff. And some of the kind of NoSQL stuff is built on kind of somewhere similar to that. But this was done with SQL, and you can imagine what a nightmare it would be, or what a wizard you should be in SQL in order to get any kind of data out of it. So yeah, it was brilliant because you didn't need a real data model. But can you imagine that you have this little form, yeah? Then this form is like a have a couple of fields and a submit and clear button. And this is just a mock-up, of course, but a nice form, yeah. And then you needed to kind of put it on a web, right? And pre-JavaScript days, yeah. So, imagine you have an MVC view and you want to, So what do? You bind the model, right? You put it on, bind it to the view, and you're done, right? In the controller, you go in, display it. When the user hits submit, you harness the thing, put it in the database. Everything's cool, right? Can you imagine doing that with this kind of data item of items and attributes and fields? So everything here had its own item and its own attribute and its type. And then there was like tables that held the logical forms and the logical entities in the system. Basically, absolute nightmare. It basically, because of that complexity, of course, and I'm sure you've done this, I've done this many times, yeah? I went into something and I look at it and I go, forget it, I'm not going to change anything here. This is like, I probably break it and all that. I just go around, right? I go directly from the API to my table that's going to do my stuff, and then, you know, I'll write something in the to kind of update this monster. So we end, you know, so you can imagine that this was a serious big ball of mud after, and multiple developers that, you know, worked on it and so on. So, so I went to my manager, and let's call him John. And John was like a real hip, you know, seriously cool guy. You know, he wore, you know, he had long hair, and it was like freestyle, yeah? It wasn't like anything you'd expect from an IT manager, you know, like he had like short kind of boots, not long cowboy boots, but short ones, yeah, really cool. Blue jeans, funky shirts, t-shirts all day and all that. So he's really, really nice guy, yeah? And I said, John, listen, this is a disaster. If we try and maintain it and own it and all that, I have no idea how long it's going to take to kind of, you know, get to a point where we can actually own it and say that we honestly know what to do. So I said, listen, there's no, as usual, my spiel, yeah, let's throw it away, and we can kind of build a new architecture, you know, using best practices, and we were dog fooding SQL 2005. I don't know if you, anybody did SQL 2005 here? Yeah, one or two. So yeah, SQL 2000, we were dog fooding it. It was an opportunity now. Yeah, we can do this, all these cool things. I think they introduced in SQL 2005, they introduced C# code inside or something. So basically, yeah, that was cool. And we kind of discussed the kind of, what are we looking at? And we said, okay, features, we don't have much feature requests here, but we have to kind of figure if we know all the features that are in the code currently, and that seemed like an okay task. What kind of time frame are we talking about? And I said, you know, we're a small team, we can do it in like, you know, 6 to 9 months. I think we can turn it around. So cost of development was like not huge, nothing scary. You know, it's not $4 million or something. It was like okay. And then we talked about the cost of ownership, and of course, I was pushing, you know, if we get a good design and a good thing, all cost of ownership would be reduced. And the last thing was the data migration. Now, the data migration was effectively done already, because as I was kind of going through the current system, I was going like, oh God, you know, like I need to figure out where everything is. So I basically migrated this data to my model, right, to what I thought was a better model, and so I wasn't concerned about data migration. I knew I could run it in, you know, a couple of minutes, maybe half an hour with everything, and then, you know, overnight, over the weekend, we can deploy it to production. I wasn't all good, all fine. So that, you know, it took a little bit longer, you know, 3 to 9 months turned into more like 12 months. But, excuse me. But all in all, it was a success. My manager was delighted. We all got MS Vacation t-shirts, you know, all good. It was great. Sorry. So my next one was very, very different. It was a SaaS, yeah. So it was a software as a service. It was the system had a large number of customers. We're talking about many thousands, yeah, and and the business was pushing very, very hard to grow. Yeah, they were like, it was in a tight space of in the market, so there was there was competition. The competition was really strong, and you know, and when I came in, it looked like an okay design, you know, like it was MVC kind of SQL Server. The SQL Server was like maxed out. Yeah, got to the end of it. I got, and excuse me. It was kind of scaled to the max. You know what you can do. You know, back then it was on premise. They got the biggest machine they could. They had a replica of SQL Server maxed to the top best machines that they could put together. It was all good, but still it was falling over in production daily. Oh Jesus. Sorry. So so I did the thing I do best. I went to my manager and I said, this is a recurrent thing. And this guy was like the CTO of the company. It wasn't a huge company, but it was like part of a very big group. And it was, and he was like this, one of those upcoming CTOs. He then became the CEO, by the way. So he was a youngish guy. He was Northern Irish. He was a really cool guy. He knew how to listen. He was very on the ball. He came from being a developer, development manager and all that, now the CTO. He actually knew what it meant to rewrite, yeah. And he was very scared, to be honest. But I came, full of, very confident. I just did a huge rewrite Microsoft. It was like, yeah, it was a success. And, hindsight is a great thing, So, I jumped into it, right? And everything was fine. The first couple of months, it was amazing, right? We came up with a really, it was a smallish team, 4 mostly senior developers. We kind of proposed an architecture, like a cutting edge architecture, back then service-oriented architecture that was now called microservices, using messaging. It had all the LTs, the reliability, scalability, durability. This system will never fall over. Yeah, that was really, really amazing, right? 6 months in, I realized that this is my estimates were way off. I said 9 to 12 months, and this was going to take a lot longer. We had we were doing changes or rewriting the new system, or writing the new system, and the business were kind of pushing features in as we were going. So we had now 2 systems, right? Legacy one, which was falling over and hard to maintain, but we still had to add features to that, and of course to the new system. And we started slowly deploying the new version into production, and now we had 2 systems, right? We had the old system that was falling over, and we had to maintain, and now we had to maintain another big pile of rubbish, right? That became very quickly a big pile of rubbish because there was a lot of pressure, there was a lot of thing, and of course, we make mistakes. I made many bad mistakes on design and all that. So that was really bad, right? If that wasn't bad enough, 6 months in, I think 6 to 9 months in, the business signed $1 million deal with a big client, yeah, and um, I was like totally overwhelmed because now we had to kind of support. There was more pressure to. There was no way that this deal would work on the old system, yeah, and we had to kind of implement it on the new system. So we were like, just like if firefighting was bad, this is like beyond firefighting, yeah. This is like just the kind of stuff that would keep you awake at night. People worked like 14-hour days, 16-hour days. I used to work on the weekends, every weekend through the whole thing, and it was like just absolute nightmare. Yeah. 18 months in, we finally got it. We finally shut down the legacy system. But to be honest, it was horrific. Yeah, it was a total failure. The beautiful architecture that we built became a monstrosity. We had, of course, made mistakes with the pressure just to deliver something. This wasn't an agile organization or anything like that, so there wasn't this iterative process or iterative. There was no CI/CD. There was nothing. There's nothing to kind of enable you to go fix it slowly or anything like that. So it was a serious failure, and I was very, very disappointed in myself, and I swore that I'll never rewrite again. Hindsight is a great thing. It is. So the next couple of projects, I went more towards the kind of decomposition kind of concept, or decomposition strategy. And I learned a lot about, DDD and, all the Martin Fuller's the fig strangler pattern, or strangler fig pattern. If you know what it is, I think Randy Shop also referenced it, but it's like this kind of idea that there's a fig tree that kind of strangles its host, yeah, by slowly growing into the tree itself, and basically killing the tree when it's done its work, yeah. So the important thing about composition, of course, is to have a really good strategy. So if you're decomposing a system, you need to make sure you address the biggest problem that caused the big ball of mud in the first place, and that would be coupling. Yeah, and while coupling has a lot of aspects, I usually kind of focus on two important things. Yeah, one is the data ownership, and the other one is what belongs where. Yeah, and what I do with my experience today, at least, is slowly, first of all, find everything that belongs together and move it together, put it together in the same big ball of mud, yeah, and then put something like an API that kind of enables us to kind of hide the fact that we're changing stuff as we go along. And then the last thing is usually kind of breaking apart the database, which is, in my experience at least, the worst offender in a big ball of mud or the old architecture style of a monolith is a relational data. Yeah, the fact that we model things by entities, user and account and product and all those kind of concepts. Yeah. And we model them as one table for an entity, and then we model the code around it. And this, to me, is one of the biggest. And then, of course, we do referential integrity between them. So you can't add, an order without having an account and without having the product and without having the line items or whatever. Yeah. So this kind of breaks, this kind of forces you to kind of do full atomic operations in one hand, and on the other hand, when you're trying to decompose it or change the behavior, you need to kind of start hacking the code to make it work. Yeah. So enabling, breaking apart the referential integrity and breaking the tables up to be more kind of aligned with the business, with what we call bounded context, which is the business operations or the user's operations or the interactions with the system, and then kind of taking fields, and those fields belong together. So you might have the user in a system like that would be thrown, would be all over the shop. Yeah. There will be a little bit in the account management, the login and the authentication, be a little bit in the communication management, another one in the account, the kind of user account logic, and a little bit more in payments, and a little bit more in CRM, and so on and so forth. Yeah, hope that makes sense. So this is at least my kind of initial from my experience. Once we get to that point, then I start kind of modeling services. All those 5 components belong together, and these 5 components belong together, and then I slowly pick up this, lift and shift, move them into kind of more message-based communication and so on and so forth. I hope that kind of makes sense. I don't want to turn this into a decomposition talk, but I love talking about it, so I'll leave it alone. The other thing that I would really like you to think about is read and writes. Read and writes are I noticed an interesting pattern there. Yeah, when you write something to the database, or when you execute, you want to do something. I don't know if you know probably about CQRS, command query separation, not CQRS, command query separation, is all about kind of, when you're writing code, it's a separate channel. When you're reading code, it's a separate channel. Most of us, mostly using entity frameworks and other ORMs, it's much simpler to just go, oh, I have a model and I'm just going to write to it and read from it, right? But when you're actually building stuff and you're doing this in production or in production-worthy code, then you come to the point where it starts fighting you. Yeah, this write model doesn't really make sense for the read model. It's not the same thing. Yeah, it's like the UI has totally different requirements than what it needs to submit an order, and what needs to show an order, or to show a collection of items, or collection of the I don't know. My best example is that, and this did happen to me. Yeah, we had like this little user icon on the top bar in a website, and in order to get the user's name, we effectively got half the database. Yeah, like got the user got the account, the user, just the whole entity, right? And I was pulling this, over the web, right? Over calling the server, deserializing it and putting it over on the wire, right? Just to get the name. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but yeah, please avoid that and try to kind of, I do it by default today. Yeah. Immediately separate read APIs, write APIs. Yeah, I'm done. And, put a bit of smoking mirrors in the APIs, so the consumers don't see the separation. It's okay. They can, they still do request response, but try not to. Let me see if I forgot something. No, I think these are the important things, but of course you can talk about that for ages. But really think about this, read and write, think about your data model. It is the worst offender in all your code. Effectively, it will drive a lot of decisions in the code. And yeah, and you know the story apart from that. So let's talk about my next rewrite. So the next one, this was like around 2011, I think, something like that, 11, 12, 11. 10, something like that, or that kind of time frame. It was a British company, a British startup, and I actually never did the rewrite in this story. I came in 2 weeks before what was the delivery deadline for the V3 rewrite. Yeah, and that never flew. Actually, 2 weeks after I joined, the CTO decided to take another job, and the new CTO was one of the founders, cool, really great guy. I love him to bits. But yeah, you know, they were doing V3 for 18 months at this stage. No, actually, I think it was 10 months or something, 9 or 10 months. And it was going nowhere, yeah? So this was like 99%. Anybody here said to the manager, it's 99% done, and it took 3 months more to deliver, yeah? All of us, yeah? Because we always have great, yeah, I'm maybe not all of us. I'm terrible at estimates. So, but this here wasn't my fault, wasn't my doing. Yeah, I'm happily not to blame here. There were about 25 devs, so it was a substantial team, and anybody can run the numbers, knows it's a lot of money a month, yeah? Knowing what you pay a developer, definitely in the UK. And they did a really interesting journey, so I'll tell you a little bit about it. So I had this monolith, and that worked well. They're very successful. So the monolith started failing. Then they went on to do a rewrite, not a rewrite, a semi-rewrite, where they took and decomposed the system that they had to 5 different systems, yeah? And each had their APIs and like web service style thing, yeah? And they were each talking to each other. Does that make sense? So they had these five systems talking to each other over web services. And I don't know if I need to tell you this, but that was a disaster, yeah? When that crashed, like when a monolith crashes, all you need to do is reboot the server, usually, yeah? And maybe try to figure out how to fix the database. But when this failed, it just failed like the most, like house of cards falling slowly, one over the other, over the other, over the other. And to figure out what started it was like a nightmare that you can't even think about, yeah? And basically, that was a disaster. So they went on to build a service-oriented architecture, and they rewrote, yeah? So that was a rewrite. And I came over, and I was the global architect for the global expansion, yeah? So I joined the team just to kind of, know the domain, understand the code, understand the architecture, And this went on for weeks, many weeks, and then the weeks turned into months, and then I went to my CTO, and I said, hey, can we have a walk, And when you go for a walk with your manager, it's like you either get fired or you're getting, promoted, kind of a thing, yeah? It was that kind of walk. And the HQ was like in London, in a lovely place beside the really beautiful gardens. And I said, let's have a walk. So we went around this garden. Of course, I won't say the name, but it was really nice. I can show you a picture. Beautiful, yeah, for acres. And we went through the chit chat and how you and how things and that. And I said, listen, this rewrite is never going to fly, And he said, what are you talking about? This is like, we have everything sorted. And I said, listen, the big elephant in the room here is the data migration. Now, this was a system that had terabytes of data, yeah? And had hundreds of thousands of users, yeah, online, like live, yeah. So they had at any given time there were between 5,000 to 10,000 users actively using the system, yeah. And I said, you'll never get the data migration done in any kind of. And he laughed at me and he said, no, you're not. I said, listen, I have a proposition for you, yeah. We're going to do this this global expansion thing in Dublin. Why don't I take the new architecture? Why don't you put this whole thing on hold? You know, keep patting the old monolith and try to kind of get it to work, right? And we'll go and use this architecture to build the global expansion. Yeah, I was employee number 2 in Dublin. I was the CTO, CEO, COO, and all the other things like hired everyone and cleaned the toilets and made sure there's water and coffee and all the rest. We of course grew quite rapidly, and when I left, we were 350. Yeah, so it was an interesting journey on its own. But what we did is we actually did exactly what we said. They eventually agreed. I was the most hated person in the company, yeah, because all the C-level and all the VPs were all counting on getting the UK deployment done, and I was like the one that killed it. Yeah. By the way, V3 never made it in the UK. Yeah, they made the calculation of data migration. That was long after I went on to do the Dublin stuff. But they made the calculation of the data migration. It was something around the positive estimates was a week. Yeah. And when I talked to the SQL guru there, he said, what week? This is going to take months to do proper data migration. Yeah. So just to give you a taste of that. And we went on to build a global migration on top of it. I think we managed to deliver a region in 6 weeks, yeah, to kind of actually deliver a working bank in a region in 6 weeks. I think that was pretty good. So that definitely wasn't a fail. That was great. Yeah. So the last rewrite I'm going to talk about. Hope you're not sick of me talking about rewrites. But the last rewrite I'm going to talk about is actually my own. I had my own little startup. I still have it, sorry, but I'm not so much part of it today. But I built it with a founder. I was a co-founder. It was a kind of identity management thing, and as startups were, I was all into the mean and lean, and we're not going to throw money away and build big systems. So we build everything very slowly, or very quickly, but very small and very simple. And it was like this kind of, the story is like, it was a little MVP that grew into a production system, yeah, and it stayed MVP for about 3 years. Like in a startup, yeah, the CEO would come every Monday and say, oh, we should do this thing. There's a new shiny thing. Let's write this thing. So this was like a patch and patch on top of a patch on top of a patch. And some things were great. Yeah, the mobile had its own kind of little microservices in the backend and all that. But the portal was all like a user portal where you manage the provision, the users and all that. And the customers would use it. That was in bits, yeah. That was like a monolith, and the microservices were accessing this data. It was a mess. It was a superior mess. But then one of our bigger customers came over and said, "Listen, we need to have a better structure around the account management. So we need a hierarchy of, the department, company, organization, department, managers, and so on." Sorry. So, and that kind of killed it, because I implemented this change, yeah, and it just killed the system, yeah. Because I had to touch each and every model in the system and change it, and it turned really bad. So we decided that it was manageable, but we knew that this was not the future, yeah. So myself, part-time, and another very brilliant developer said, yeah, we just rewrite. And now, look, we looked at it and we said, like, and I said, no, we're not going to rewrite. We're slowly going to move. We have some stuff here. He said, no, forget it. We're going to rewrite. I said, listen, this is, I've done this before. It's terrible. He said, no, don't worry. We'll do this. And we looked at it, I looked at it with fresh eyes and said, okay, we don't have a lot of customers. We had 10 customers, right? Needless to say, the startup wasn't very successful. But, it's okay. Not a lot of customers. We don't have a lot of data. We don't, it's a no-brainer. We're gonna make it. Yeah. And so we did. I thought it would take 3 months, but it took more like 9. But we did build a really cool system out of it, a really cool design, and the most stable thing I've managed to deliver all my life. And it is working really well. I left because of disagreements with the CEO, but I'm still a shareholder. But this is a really stable, really easy to maintain system now, and and I'm really proud of what we achieved. Of course, credits to my fellow developer who helped a lot, and a couple of developers along the way that helped us. So that was a win. So it's not all black, and it's not black and white, and there's good stuff and bad stuff. So let's summarize what we. Or let me try to summarize this. So the rule of thumb, don't rewrite. And you're always going to find things that initially sound like, yeah, it's horrible, it's terrible, and it's easier to rewrite. And when you start to look at a rewrite, you realize how complicated it is, right? And it's easier to take something that and move it slowly than to start everything from scratch, because it took usually it is 3 years, 5 years in that you get to the situation where you want to rewrite. And at this stage, there's history, there's data that you don't remember, there's business rules you might forget, and so on and so forth. So just don't rewrite, okay? Just listen to, take my advice, don't rewrite. I like to say that, rewriting is like walking through loads of rabbit holes, yeah? And every rabbit hole you go in, you never know where you're gonna come out. And Alice in Wonderland is a trip, a day trip, in compared to kind of rewriting a system, yeah? So, could end in tears, as you say. And Kenneth Bath wrote this, and this is a really nice, I really like it. It's like, you didn't make this shit this mess in a month. You can edit it. You're not gonna fix it in a month, yeah? And it is so true, we're so optimistic, and it's great that we're optimistic because we do great things, and because of our optimism, we are not afraid, and we're not, we're brave. We have big things there, and we don't give. Yeah, but really, seriously, just this is not. But again, some scenarios, and I described them, where the risk is very low, or the damage is that bad that you're actually saying this is not salvageable, then absolutely, take it, but do it intelligently. Yeah, look at the risks, look at what you're going to change, understand what you're going to miss, and make sure you have some mitigation criteria strategy around it. And look, do things like the fig pattern. If you're decomposing, do the fig pattern, do the clean up as you go along, have this opportunity where you're slowly cleaning up things and moving to the new good system. That's more or less it, I think. Thank you very much. And I'll take...
Thank you, Sean. Do we have questions?
Any questions?
Yes, I will give you a microphone because we have online users. Are you okay with that?
Have you come many times situation where you have to rewrite something that it's because the platform is end of life?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just actually now working with a customer to do exactly that. They're using Azure mobile services.
Yeah.
Have you heard about that? So Azure mobile services have been deprecated by Microsoft. So they're basically now as part of the rewrite or the decomposition, to be honest, they are going to change these with APIs and then decompose the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's a little bit easier. But let's say that I have unfortunately come off couple of times that the whole platform,
so that's like that.
like
That's really unfortunate. Like,
there is.
so what platform is it on?
Page PHP 5.
Okay.
So the security updates are not coming.
Right.
So it has to be rewritten, and of course the whole code is a mess.
Yeah.
So
That's a really. There's nothing to do. This is like, where you go like, that's it. It's a
rewrite.
It's a rewrite, and you've got nothing to do about it. But still, if you can do it in modules or use the opportunity to build it in modules, and not repeat your old design. This is one of the,
It is not my design.
Yeah, not but the old design, yeah.
Yeah.
And try and do a better job. But yeah,
That was more like that. Not as such question, but let's say that I wanted to point out also that there is situations.
some situations are, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. We have more questions.
Someone there.
I'll just pass.
Thank you for your talk, Sean.
Thank you.
My question would be, let's say, so you said we shouldn't rewrite, we should decompose. But could you tell maybe this kind of a rule of thumb to detect the moment when we should start rewriting, decomposing, whatever it may be?
Yeah, so the telltale signs of the system's done is usually the fact that that it takes a very long time to introduce new features. So that would be like it takes 3 months to to put a new feature into production because it breaks the system. There's like a very long cycle of QA develop, the bug fixing, and then it's stable, it goes into production, the production system fails, and we all do firefighting for a day or a couple of hours, and then it's stable, and that's okay. That would be a really classic scenario where you go, this is not, it's just, even from a business perspective, it's cost too much to maintain it. Yeah, it's just and most businesses today will not tolerate something like that. Yeah, it's like there is, everybody wants stuff done tomorrow, and this doesn't work. Yeah, but this is the big bulk of work, a lot of failures in production. This is where rewrites are, or decomposition, or you need to start moving towards something new.
Look, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Do we have more questions? Okay, last question from Thomas. When a decomposed system has much smaller cognitive load, would rewrites be a valid approach?
Yes. So that's something that I didn't say. Once you're building something like microservices the right way, and I'm not going to get into it, but when you have a good microservice system, and you say, hey, what, this module of counts is like it's written all wrong, or there's a lot of data here that actually, or a lot of things here that belong in another component, that is a valid scenario of a good rewrite. Why? Because effectively you're rewriting only one module, and the system is built for this kind of maintenance. This is maintenance. This is that's what this system is built to cater for. Yeah. So it's very easy to go, oh yeah, I'm going to rewrite this thing. This is only a small part of the system, and move things around, or create two services or two things out of it, and so on and so forth. Make sense? I hope.
Do we have more questions? I think we don't, right? Because I don't see the light is quite...
I don't see any.
Okay, so let's give a last round of applause to Sean.
Thank you very much.